This episode of Classic Car Collections takes us to the far south coast of New South Wales, where we'll be visiting the Sapphire Coast Historic Vehicle Club. Housed within the grounds of the club is the Peter Learmont Pavilion, which is a pavilion dedicated to the collection of vehicles by Peter Learmont. The collection consists of 26 vehicles, and he's collected these over a lifetime. Unfortunately, Peter passed away about a year ago, and we can't talk with him, obviously, but we've managed to be able to talk with Murray Learmont, his son, who's going to give us some of the background of Peter's classic car collecting. And we'll also be talking with Neville Leach. Neville Leach is familiar with the vehicles themselves and has been involved with them for near 20 years. He's currently working on getting the majority of them running and rolling prior to their sale, and he's got some fascinating stories. This is a wonderful collection of classic cars, so hopefully you'll enjoy the story. We're inside the Learmont Pavilion now, and you can see behind me this magnificent Packard, which is a 1926 Packard runabout, and that's part of the display that we'll be looking at later on. But right now, I've got Murray Learmont with me, Peter's son, and we're going to talk about Peter's background, about where he's from and things like that. So to lead into that, where did Peter grow up and what was his background?
Well, Peter was born in Cooma. He was a twin. His brother Don and he did everything together. They were born in 1931, so it's pretty tough times.
Yeah.
So I think they played a lot of sport and organised themselves with each other, and that was the fun that they had.
They schooled in Cooma?
Schooled in Cooma for the bulk of it. I think they did a bit of schooling, I'm not sure when, but down in Bega. And then much later on in high school, they did a few years of schooling up in Gosford as well.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. And did Peter go to uni or anything like that?
Yeah, once he finished his, when he finished school, he didn't want to go to uni, but his mother was insistent that he go on and do some tertiary education, so he chose pharmacy, and because his sister had already done pharmacy, and he thought, well, that's the shortest route through uni, and that was going to be a bonus, having the lecture notes from his sister.
Right.
So he and his brother both did pharmacy at Sydney Uni.
Yeah. Oh, great. And he became a pharmacist and practiced?
Became a pharmacist, did a lot of locum work, moving around. I think that sort of really suited him in those early years when he first got registered. Seeing a bit of the country, sort of moving around and meeting different people and things. But I think he and his brother, they both had a love of cars. I think as a result of their association with their cousins who had a trucking business in Bega, which was the Hayes family. And I think if they hadn't gone through uni, they probably wanted to be truck drivers for the Hayes.
Yeah, right.
But they didn't, and cars were pretty hard to come by in those post-war years, and American cars sort of dribbled into the country, and I think that's where the love of them came from, purely because of the scarcity of them.
So it was American cars?
Love an American car. So I think when he and Don decided to go travelling, they wanted to go to the States and Canada. It was a lot of the reason to go there was purely to get an American car and bring home.
Right, which they did, didn't they?
Which they did. They achieved their goal, and they both came back with beautiful 57 Chevys.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. One of them's in the collection still. Is that right?
Yeah, well, Dad's one's still in his collection, and amazingly, Don's one is still in his family as well. So his daughter Lisa and keeps the other one.
Yeah. Okay, what about when you were younger? Can you remember going in these cars or doing trips in these different cars and so on as they came along?
Well, yeah, from a very early age, I remember, the 57 Chev was the daily driver, and Mum used to drive that everywhere, and we'd be, coming home from school, we'd be in it. But earlier than that, I remember each and every one of the kids in the family was delivered home from hospital from birth in the Chevy, and it's a very special vehicle for that reason alone.
Yeah.
But I was also married in the vehicle.
Wow.
It holds
wow,
a very
long
soft
history,
spot
yeah.
for me.
What about holidays and so on?
Probably, I can't really remember going on holidays, but we probably did in these cars. But yeah, there were plenty of times when holidays had just turned into car hunting sort of expeditions, because we'd see something on the side of the road, and we'd wait for Dad to go in and climb into somebody's yard.
There's a lot of that that's gone on in the past.
And I'm sure you guys would be the same.
Yeah. So, was there a goal? Did Peter have a goal? I want to have this particular car, or I want to have a collection of these, or whatever. Because looking at around, there's Chevys, there's a lot of American stuff. There's Buicks. There's a number of things. So it was mainly American centred.
Yeah, mainly American centred, and I remember, he had a real soft spot for Buicks, and I think he'd come across a few Chevs, probably because the earlier Chevs were probably a little bit more available, more around. But yeah, Buicks and Chevs. Then A-model Fords, he seemed to love the A-models. And it wasn't until much later, really, he sort of discovered the Packards, and they became his love.
Yeah, because they're beautiful vehicles.
He had a few Packards, and he found a place up in Inverell that had a number of Packards that he bought from up there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And they ended up here, right, in this pavilion, which is part of the car club here.
Yeah.
But this was exclusively for Peter's cars, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. He came to an arrangement with the car club that if he built his own shed, then he could house his own cars in here for the period of which would be the rest of his life, and then the shed would pass on to be the property of the car club.
Yeah, okay. Right, so as Peter aged, because he lived to a ripe old age, didn't he?
Yeah, Dad lived till 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's only a bit over a year now that he passed.
Wow, yeah. In his latter years, was he still active with the cars, or what happened there?
No, Dad's health really went downhill probably in the last 3 or 4 years of his life, where certainly his capability to do things on his cars didn't extend beyond coming down and looking at them and maybe taking a cover off. But Dad developed dementia, and he went into a nursing home for the final 2 years of his life.
Right.
And his memory got to the point where he didn't know what you'd said to him 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
but I remember, we'd go for a drive probably once a week, and we'd go past the club here, and he'd certainly remember something about the club. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we had cars in there.
Right.
Yeah, so it was sad, but it was also lovely to know that the cars were very close to him.
Yeah, such a significant part
Yeah,
of his
they were a
life.
significant part of his
Yeah,
life.
that's right.
Yeah.
So the stage that you're at now with the collection, because Peter passed away a bit over a year ago, right? And I can see around here now that there's a lot of activity in getting cars going and things like that. You've got an auction coming up, have you?
Yes, the family's decided we're going to hang on to a few cars, but the bulk of them will be sold, and we wanted to arrange that by an auction through an auction house, where we would find good homes for these cars, preferably somebody that loves the original nature of these, and you know, hopefully they go to a good home and get further restored.
Because it's not an auction and the cars disappear. It means that they're going to a new person to care for them and look after them and enjoy them.
Well, I think that's the great thing about these clubs. The clubs certainly value the cars, but additional to that, there's so much expertise that's pooled together through the club that really helps and keeps that positive mindset for the owner in moving these cars forward and not backward.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Murray, thanks so much for chatting with me.
No, pleasure, Ken.
And giving some background on Peter.
Right. Joining me now is Neville Leach. And Neville's been involved with the collection and with Peter for quite some time. Firstly, Neville, can you tell me how you got involved with the Learmont Collection and with Peter himself?
Well, when I arrived at the club, there was always a shortage of people helping with the tours. And Peter Learmont was outstanding in the presentation of his motor cars, and I simply tagged along with Peter, and it all evolved from there.
Great, yeah. The tours that were done, they were tours that came to visit the car club here, were they? Coach tours and so on?
We had bus tours coming in, somewhere between 30 and 40 people in the tours. We'd break them up into two groups, one into the Greenwich shed, one into the Learmont shed, and I always stuck to the tours with Peter.
Right. Peter would have been a bit of a character, wouldn't he, during those tours?
Peter was unbelievable in the way he described his life, the way he led into collecting cars, and it all started simply because he was fascinated with older cars, and it just grew from there.
Yeah, great. So you've known these cars for a long time now, then?
Probably 17, 18 years.
Oh, wow, wow. So how about if you take us through some of the vehicles and any stories that you know of them?
Okay, just quickly, this is the Datsun 260Z. It was a collectible item as far as Peter was concerned, but really a modern car by the standard, or comparing the standard of this one to the cars we're going to look at. This 1926 Minerva was a real pride and joy of Peter. He loved it because he considered it to be the Rolls-Royce of motor cars. He competed against Rolls-Royce, and it was very popular with overseas people, and it was made in Belgium, and it was considered the Rolls-Royce of the motor car in that area at the time.
Wow.
This is the 1928 1928 Essex. They went out of business, but a very, very modern car at the time. They advertised things like piano hinges for the doors. That was a leading sales point, which sort of made me think a bit. But they had a radiator that was controlled by a thermostat, and the grille would open and close depending on the heat. The Studebaker, another very, very popular motor car at the time. They were very easily obtained. They were reasonably priced in the old days. And Peter picked this one up. The daughter, Louise, she loved that car, and that was classed as her motor car.
It looks still a lovely car.
Oh, absolutely. One of our better ones. The Oldsmobile here is only partly restored. The T model here has got a lot of stories about it. The main one was that it was one of the first cars that Peter ever took on as a project. It took some years to do, but an outstanding job was achieved, and he used the vehicle regularly. And it was used for one of the girls getting married in the family, but it was quite well used as a family car. And the kids, I believe, told, or Peter referred to it, that the kids always reckoned that when he went for a drive, it had to break down. They always had to do something every time they went for a ride. But as you can see, a highly collectible motor car. The next car we've got here is the Holden 48215. It was the first of the production cars made here in Australia. The 48215 was called so. There was 3 brought into Australia as prototypes, and that was the one selected for production. First car to be built in Australia.
Wow.
Completely built in Australia.
And very original too, by the look of it.
This one's very, very original. A little bit down in the paintwork. One of the things Peter said, just quickly, Peter said to me one day, I'm going to get this painted. He got a guy out, and the guy walked around it and had a look at it. And Peter expected a price of probably $5,000, $6,000. And the bloke said, Peter, to do this car properly, we're looking at $16,000.
Oh.
Peter's brother, identical twin, you know, that's all been covered, hasn't it? You've covered all that part? Yeah. Peter's brother, Don, went back to America for some time, and while he was over there, he brought this as a drive car. A lovely, lovely motor car, but rather cute. For the senior person who struggles getting in and out of cars, this one's got great access with a huge door, but when you get in, you can move the steering wheel to one side or back. It goes like a gem. Now, the really smart little motor car here, the MG, was completely rebuilt over a number of years from the ground up. It's in perfect condition as far as the body's concerned. Mechanically, it's down a bit, but otherwise a lovely motor car. MG 1953 TF. The older cars in the background here are all things that Peter put together over the years, and he used to stack lots of parts on them, thinking he's going to do it one day, but unfortunately, like all of us, life ran ahead of him and he was left behind. But the little one in the corner there is one of the very, very early T models. Few parts missing, but a real buy for somebody. The Buick, very, very high class motor car. They were the first of General Motors cars that they built. So that's one of the very first. The Hudson Terraplane. Peter used to tell the story that Hudson and Terraplane were both very good motor car companies, building quality vehicles, but run out of puff. The companies were going broke, in other words, so they had to turn around and they combined 2 businesses together. On the tours, Peter would say, that part is Hudson, that part is Terraplane. He was convinced that's how it was, so I went along with that. This lovely A model here, Peter saw one driving around in Cooma and he decided that he had to have that motor car. This is what he told me. He chased up those people over a period of time and they wouldn't sell that car to him. But he had this idea that he wanted to do home deliveries of pills or medicines. So that car, eventually he got hold of it, had it done up, and you'll see on the back of it there, if you look, there's a sign that says Learmont for A-class home deliveries, was it? I'm getting wrong here now. Learmont Pharmacy for A-model service. So that car, his apprentices, his understudies, delivered all the medicines around Cooma in this particular car. Right. It drives fairly well too. It's not a bad little motor car.
That's interesting history on that one.
Yeah.
This is a club car, isn't it? This Citroen?
The Citroen, that's the first car to circumnavigate Australia. It was done by a 7-day Adventist with his understudy. Very interesting story. Original car, the absolute original car that did around Australia is in the foyer of the National Museum at Canberra. This 27 Packard 7-seater was used as a delivery vehicle in the high country, and it did that for some 25 years, carrying parcels and passengers throughout the high country, or the snow country we'd call it.
Up in the Monaro.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I did that for 25 years, and that's well underway to being restored properly. This lovely old shed here, it's a great little vehicle. Peter hired this out for the making of the film Farlap.
Oh,
And it was out there, and Peter told me, he said they hired it for 3 months and they had it for something like 7. And I got all impressed about the Farlap, so I had a look at the film one night, called it up, and this car was shown with bullet holes along the side in the film. And I said to Peter, fancy you letting them shoot holes in the side of it? And he laughed like bugger. He didn't say anything. So the next time we come in for a tour, I came in here and there's bullet holes. He'd come along and put stickers on it. Some people just don't understand filming. Now, this one here is a 1931 Model A real top quality motor car. It's a top quality motor car because it was competing against the Chevs. Of course, it was the second one after the T model, but I love it because you can hop in and you can open the door and you can wind up windows when they move. And it's a comfortable car to drive. It's called a sports coupe because of these irons on the side, but the roof doesn't fold down. All it does is in the back, you've got the dicky seat. You've got the dicky seat, and your passengers can sit in there, and you undo this part here, roll it up, and you've got the ability to talk backwards and forwards. So that was a modern day sports coupe.
Yeah.
Lovely motor car.
Fabulous. Yeah.
But unfortunately, the motor's worn out in that one. We jumped the Packard. Magnificent motor car.
Yes, Murray.
My favourite car.
Yeah, Murray told us about that.
Yeah. Oh, I had a fair amount of trouble getting it going too.
Yeah. This is a lovely car.
This is a lovely car for sure. It was Peter obtained it when he didn't want to buy a motor car. And the story goes, very, very quickly, was that he was in his shop and a young bloke come in on a Friday afternoon and he wanted to buy the motor car. I wanted to sell the motor car. Peter said, I'm not buying any more motor cars.
He's cutting out the back.
Yeah, right. A young chap came into the shop on the Friday afternoon, and he said to Peter, I've got a motor car, I believe you buy motor cars, I've got a motor car for sale. Peter said, I'm not buying any more motor cars, I better cut this short. The young bloke encouraged Peter to walk out and have a look at the car. So Peter walks out the shop and he said, I spotted it in the right side of my eye, but I looked to the left. The instant I spotted that car, my heart started going like this. I had to have that motor car. I had to have that car. So I looked down the street and said, no, there's nothing there I want. The young bloke said, over here. Anyway, long story. Peter ends up buying the car, fixes the young bloke up, chucks the keys on the bench and goes back to work. 6 o'clock, he's locking up. Oh, my goodness gracious. The motor car's still out there. I better get it and put it away. Grabs the keys and out he goes. And he's about so much higher than me. He gets in the car. All goes, eh?
Oh, wow.
So Peter was a character. The next day his mother comes in and she said, what have you been doing, Peter? Oh, not much. I bought another car. It's out in the backyard. Mum goes out, has a look at the car, comes back in and says, give me the keys. She took it for a drive and she drove it for 7 years around Cooma, even though she had a brand new Corolla. That was a town car for 7 years. The T model here, that's a club one now. That comes from Lakes Entrance. Peter went through there one day and saw it out the front, and he hounded them until he eventually ended up buying it. But he bought it on the condition that if they needed it for a presentation or something, he had to take it back down there so they could use it. So it's always been drivable, but nobody started it here well, it must be 20 odd years. The Buick's an interesting car. The life story of Walter Chrysler. Walter Chrysler left the rail industry as a fitter and turner, went to Buick. That's one of the first cars that Walter Chrysler was involved in, as factory manager of Buick. That was the first car to come out with electrics on it. It was a beautiful motor car. The 1926 Chev, that hasn't been going for about 40 odd years or longer.
You got it going, did you?
It was seized up, solid, absolutely. Took me 5 days before I could get the engine to turn. And yes, it's drivable now. We were going to drive it today, but we haven't got around to it. A bit wet outside. Now you're talking class vehicles. Walter Chrysler was in charge of the assembly line when these were being built. All electrics, a beautiful motor car, and lovely to drive. When you hit the starter motor, you don't hear any cranking. It just turns over so quiet, it starts up. A really quality motor car. The Studebaker here, that was the first car owned by Reg Ansett. Reg Ansett bought that car when he came back from being a survey assistant in Queensland, and he started a business transporting people between Maryborough and Ballarat. It didn't kick off because Maryborough was a small town. His father turned around and said to him, "Reg, if you want to make money, you've got to go where people have got money." So he changed direction and went to Hamilton and Horsham, quickly got going. Soon he had 20 of those vehicles or more running around. Menzies came along in the government and said, "Our trains are not carrying any people anymore in that area. We need to do something about it." Menzies pushed through Parliament taxi licences and put Reg out of business. Reg jumped off that, immediately recovered, went to Melbourne, bought a second-hand Fokker, and that's when he started flying people from Hamilton Horsham to Melbourne.
Wow, what an incredible story.
This car is a result of Walter Chrysler leaving General Motors, Buick, starting his own business, and this was a car that came out that was far ahead of any other car on the market. It had a full pressure lubricated engine with an oil filter. It had an air cleaner, and he mounted the engine on rubber so you didn't get all the vibrations. And that was the start of the Chrysler 70. But the most important fact was that he demanded that every car be tested before they were sold. And this car was called the 70 because it had to run 70 hours at 70 miles an hour on a test track, changing tyres and drivers only.
Wow.
And that took them from 64th in the sales, in car sales in America to number 3 in a matter of in a matter of months.
Fantastic. Neville, thank you so much. That's been such an incredible journey to see these vehicles and hear the stories about them. So thank you so much for helping me out.
I hope it's reasonable.
When in their day, when they just start, it is just mate.
When did self-starters come in?
Yeah, after this.
Yeah. You can see why.
I think we got, oh, yeah, we got the choke on, haven't we? We're going next
Let's have a go. Right, ain't too much to ride.